The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its walls were made of crystal that had been mined from dying stars. Its floors were polished stone from 100 different worlds. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, and in those seats sat the representatives of the most powerful species in the known universe. Ambassador Yuna Kim sat in the human section. It was a small area, tucked away in the upper levels, far from the center where the important decisions were made. She had been sitting in this same seat for 12 years. She had watched countless debates. She had raised her hand to vote on matters that affected billions of lives. And she had learned, slowly and painfully, that her vote meant almost nothing. Today, the council was discussing trade routes. The Kathrani wanted exclusive access to the Outer Rim shipping lanes. The Salaith wanted higher tariffs on medical supplies. The Vorn wanted more military bases near the border. It was the same conversation they had been having for decades, just with different words. Yuna looked down at the datapad in her hands. On it was a proposal she had spent 3 months preparing. It was simple. Humanity had developed a cure for a disease that was killing millions of people in the outer colonies. They wanted to share it freely. No cost. No conditions. Just help for those who needed it. When her turn came to speak, she stood and walked to the central platform. The crystal walls made her voice echo as she explained the situation. Children were dying. Families were being torn apart. Humanity had the cure and wanted to give it away. Elder Vorix of the Kathrani listened with a thin smile on his face. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His scales had faded from bright green to a dull gray, but his eyes were still sharp. They watched Yuna with something that looked like amusement. When she finished speaking, Vorix raised his hand. "I call for a vote," he said. His voice was soft, but carried through the entire hall. "All in favor of the human proposal?" A few hands went up. The Valorans, who had always been kind to humanity, a scattering of smaller species who had received human help in the past, but it was not enough. Not nearly enough? All opposed? The Kathrani raised their hands. The Salaith followed. Then the Vorn, the Drathi, the Makari, and dozens of others. The sea of raised hands stretched across the hall like a wave. "The proposal is denied," Vorix said. "Resource allocation priorities do not permit such expenditure at this time." Yuna walked back to her seat. Her face showed nothing. She had learned long ago not to show her feelings in this place. But inside, something heavy settled in her chest. It was not surprise. It was not even disappointment anymore. It was something deeper. Something tired after the session ended. She made her way through the winding corridors of the council complex. The walls here were covered with paintings and sculptures, celebrating the great achievements of the member species. There were no human works among them. There never had been. She was passing by a half-open door when she heard voices inside. She recognized one of them immediately. It was Vorix. "The humans are becoming tiresome," he was saying. "Always with their charity. Always with their helping of lesser species. Do they not understand how the universe works?" Another voice laughed. "It belonged to Trade Minister Orvani of the Salaith. Let them play their little games. They are useful after all. Their ships patrol our borders for free. Their doctors staff our hospitals for free. Their engineers build our networks for free." Exactly, Vorix said. "They give, and never ask for anything in return. It is almost pathetic, really. Like watching a creature that does not understand it is being eaten." Yuna stood frozen in the corridor. Her hands were shaking, but she did not move. She did not make a sound. She simply listened. "Did you hear about the Valoran blight cure?" Orvani asked. "The one the humans developed 20 years ago? I patented it last month. It is selling very well in the inner systems." "Brilliant," Vorix said. "And the humans do not suspect? Why would they? They gave it away freely. They did not even ask for credit. They are so concerned with being helpful that they forget to protect themselves." Yuna walked away. She walked through the corridors, through the gardens, through the transport hub, and back to the human embassy. She did not speak to anyone. She did not stop moving until she was in her private office with the door. locked behind her. Then she sat down and pulled up a file on her computer. It was a report from Admiral Jiwon Park, commander of Earth's diplomatic fleet. She had asked him to investigate something weeks ago. Now she finally understood why the results had made her so uneasy. The Council had been taxing human trade ships at triple the standard rate. For 40 years, the extra money had been funneled directly to the inner circle species. Trillions of credits stolen from humanity under the cover of complex trade agreements that no one had ever bothered to explain. There was a knock at her door. She opened it to find two people standing outside. Admiral Giwon was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Dr. Minho-beek was younger, with the look of someone who spent too much time in laboratories and not enough time sleeping. "You heard?" Yuna asked. They both nodded. "I found more," Minho said quietly. "Every major medical breakthrough we have shared in the last 40 years has been claimed by someone else. Our agricultural techniques are being sold to colonies who could have had them for free. Our educational programs have been rebranded with Kethrani names." Guan sat down heavily. "We have given everything to them. Everything we had, and they laughed at us for it." The three of them sat in silence for a long time. Outside the window, alien ships moved through the sky, going about their business, completely unaware of what was happening in this small room. Finally, Yuna spoke. Her voice was calm. There was no anger in it, no bitterness. Just a quiet certainty that had been building for years. "How long do we keep giving to those who only take?" No one answered. But in that silence, something shifted. Something that had been building for 40 years finally reached its breaking point. Not with a shout or a cry or a declaration of war, just with a question asked quietly in a small room, by people who had finally run out of patience. Admiral Jiwon looked at the two others. "What do we do?" Yuna turned to face the window. The lights of the council complex glittered in the distance. She had spent 12 years looking at those lights, believing that one day humanity would be accepted as equals. Now she understood the truth. "We stop giving," she said simply. "We stop giving, and we see what happens when they have to stand on their own." The withdrawal began so slowly that no one noticed it first. There were no announcements, no angry speeches, no demands or ultimatums. Humanity simply started to pull back, piece by piece. Like a tide going out, Captain Sun-Ho Lee was the first to receive his orders. He commanded the research vessel Horizon, a ship that had spent 15 years patrolling the dangerous border regions of Council space. His crew had saved thousands of lives. They had stopped pirate attacks, rescued stranded ships, and mapped safe routes through asteroid fields. They had done all of this for free, because that was what humans did. The message from Earth was short. Return home for maintenance. Duration unknown. Sun-Ho read it 3 times. He understood what it really meant. He called his crew together and told them they were going home. Some of them cried. Others just nodded quietly. They had all seen how the council treated them. They had all felt the weight of being used. When the council sent a message asking why the Horizon was leaving, Sun-Ho replied simply, "Maintenance needs." Did not explain further. He did not need to. Director Hyen Cho was next. She ran 3 humanitarian stations in non-human space. These stations provided food, medicine, and shelter to refugees from a dozen different species. They operated at a loss, funded entirely by Earth, because humanity believed that helping others was the right thing to do. One by one, Hyen closed the stations. She did not make any public statements. She simply sent messages to her staff telling them to pack up and come home. When alien officials asked what was happening, she told them the truth. Our resources are needed elsewhere. No one tried to stop her. No one offered to help fund the stations. No one even said thank you for the years of service. The refugees were simply moved to council facilities that were overcrowded and underfunded. Within weeks, it was as if the human stations had never existed. Engineer Taeyeon-Roo had the most important job of all. 20 years ago, he had designed the quantum relay network that connected the entire galaxy. It was humanity's greatest gift to the Council. Instant communication across thousands of light years. Trade agreements signed in seconds instead of months. Emergency calls that could reach help immediately. Humanity had built the network. Humanity had maintained it. And humanity had never asked for anything in return. Now Taeon sat in his office on Earth, looking at the master controls for the entire system. He had the power to shut it all down with a single command. But that was not what he had been asked to do. Humanity did not believe in destruction. They believed in simply stepping back. He disabled the human access codes. He removed the automatic repair protocols. He erased the maintenance schedules from the system. The relays would still work. For now, but without human engineers to maintain them, they would eventually fail. One by one, like candles burning out in the dark, Taeon sent his report to Admiral Juwon. It is done. They have maybe 2 years before the first major failures. Maybe 5 before the whole system collapses. Across council space, humans began to leave. Doctors packed their bags and walked out of alien hospitals. Engineers quit their jobs at research facilities. Teachers closed their schools and returned to Earth. Merchants stopped visiting alien ports. Scientists withdrew from joint projects. None of them made a scene. None of them demanded apologies or compensation. They simply said goodbye, wished their former colleagues well, and went home. The council barely noticed. They were too busy with their own affairs. Trade disputes, border conflicts, political maneuvering. The disappearance of a few humans here and there did not seem important. Elder Vorix heard the reports and laughed. The humans are sulking, he told his advisors. They are upset that we did not approve their little charity project. Give them time. They will come crawling back when they realize how much they need us. His advisors nodded and agreed, because that was what advisors did. None of them pointed out that it was humanity who had been providing services, not receiving them. None of them asked who would patrol the borders now, or maintain the relays, or staff the hospitals. These were not questions that important people asked, Ambassador. Yuna Kim spent her last week in council space packing her office. She took down the pictures on her walls. She filed away 12 years of proposals, most of which had been rejected. She said goodbye to the few alien friends she had made, the ones who had treated her with kindness, even when their governments did not. On her final day, she walked to the council archives. It was a massive building filled with records dating back thousands of years. Every treaty, every agreement, every law that had ever been passed was stored here. Why UNA submitted a single document? It was short, just a few paragraphs. It stated that Earth was formally withdrawing from all non-binding cooperative agreements with the Galactic Council. No more free patrols. No more free medical aid. No more free technology sharing. No more free anything. The clerk who received the document barely looked at it. He stamped it with a seal and filed it away in a drawer with thousands of other papers. He did not understand what it meant. He did not realize that he was holding the end of an era in his hands. Yuna walked out of the archives, did not look back. The last human ship to leave. Council space was a small transport carrying the final embassy staff. Captain Sunho had been asked to escort them to the border. It was a simple job, but he wanted to do it himself. It felt right. As they crossed out of council territory, Sunho stood on the bridge and looked at the stars behind them. Somewhere out there, the great council complex was still glittering with lights. Important people were still making important decisions. Life was going on as if nothing had changed. Send the final transmission, Sunho said to his communications officer. The young woman nodded and opened a channel. Her voice was steady as she spoke the words that would be humanity's last message to the council. Thank you for your time. Then she closed the channel, and the ship jumped to faster than light speed, and council space disappeared behind them like a dream fading in the morning light. On Earth, Admiral Guan received confirmation that the withdrawal was complete. Every human was home. Every asset was secured. Every connection had been severed. He sent a single message to Ambassador Yuna, who was already settling into her new office at the Earth Government Complex. It is done. What now? Yuna read the message and looked out her window at the blue sky and green trees of her home world. For the first time in 12 years, she smiled. Now she wrote back, "We wait." and we see if they can survive without the people they treated like nothing. 3 months after the humans left, the first relay station failed. It was a small station on the edge of Kathrani space. One day it was working perfectly. The next day, it was dead. The technicians who were sent to repair it stood around the broken machinery and scratched their heads. They had never actually learned how the system worked. The humans had always handled it. Trade Minister Ovani received the report at breakfast. He read it twice, then set it aside. One relay station was not important. There were thousands of others. The network would be fine. 2 weeks later, 12 more stations failed. Then 30. Then 100. Orvani stopped eating breakfast. He spent his mornings reading reports that grew longer and more alarming every day. Shipping times had doubled, then tripled. Communication between distant colonies became unreliable. Trade agreements that used to be signed in seconds now took weeks to process. Find someone to fix this, he ordered his staff. Hire engineers. Pay whatever they want. His staff tried. They sent messages to every species in Council space. But no one knew how to repair quantum relay technology. The humans had invented it. The humans had built it. And the humans had taken their knowledge with them when they left. General Dex of the Vorn Collective had different problems. His military had relied on human patrol ships to guard the outer shipping lanes. Now those lanes were unprotected, and the pirates knew it. Attack reports flooded his office like a storm. A cargo ship destroyed here. A passenger vessel raided there. Entire convoys disappearing without a trace. In 3 months, pirate activity had increased by 400%. Dex called an emergency meeting with his commanders. "We need more ships," he said. "We need to patrol those lanes ourselves." His commanders looked at each other nervously. "Sir," one of them said, "we do not have enough ships. Our fleet was designed for major conflicts, not patrol duty. And our ships are not efficient enough for long-range patrols. The human ships could run for months on minimal fuel. Ours need to refuel every few weeks, then build better ships," Dex growled. "With what money, sir? And what technology? The humans designed most of our navigation systems. We do not have engineers who understand them." Dex threw his datapad against the wall. It shattered into pieces that scattered across the floor. His commanders stood in silence, afraid to speak. On Kathrani Prime, Elder Vorex faced the worst crisis of all. A new plague had appeared in the northern provinces. It spread quickly, killing thousands in the first week. The medical teams rushed to respond. They ran into a problem they had not expected. The Kathrani medical database was built on human frameworks. Human doctors had helped design it. Human researchers had organized the information, and human scientists had created most of the treatments it contained. Without human support, the system was falling apart. Files were corrupted. Search functions did not work. Treatments that should have been easy to find were buried under layers of broken code. Vorex watched the death toll rise every day. He remembered laughing at the humans for their charity work. He remembered calling them pathetic for wanting to help others. Now his own people were dying and he could not save them. "To contact the humans," he ordered. "Tell them we require their assistance." The message was sent to Earth through what remained of the communication network. It took 3 days to arrive instead of 3 seconds. When the response came, it was short. "We wish you well in your endeavors." Vorex read those words over and over. He could not believe it. The humans had always helped before. They had always said yes. They had always been there when someone needed them. He sent another message, more desperate this time. "We are willing to pay. Name your price. Our people are dying." The response came a week later, even shorter than the first. "We are unable to assist at this time. Best wishes." The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The great hall that had once been filled with confident voices was now thick with fear. Species that had ignored each other for centuries were now pointing fingers and shouting accusations. The Kathrani stole human medical technology, the Valoran ambassador announced. They patented cures that were given freely and sold them for profit. The Salaith taxed human ships at triple the legal rate, another voice called out. They funneled the money into their own accounts. The Vorn used human patrol ships to guard their borders while spending nothing on their own defense. Elder Vorik stood at the center of the chaos, his gray scales almost white with stress. Enough, he shouted. This blame serves no purpose. We must focus on solutions. The Valoran ambassador rose from her seat. She was small and fragile-looking, with silver eyes that had seen more than most. Her species had been saved from extinction by human doctors 20 years ago. She had never forgotten. Solutions, she said. Her voice was quiet, but the hall fell silent to hear her. You mocked them for their kindness. You stole from them? You treated them as lesser beings. And now you demand that they return to save you? Vorix opened his mouth to respond, but she continued. I warned this council. I told you that humanity was different. I told you that their generosity was a gift, not a weakness to be exploited. You did not listen then. What would you have us do? Vorix demanded. The Valoran ambassador gathered her things and walked toward the exit. At the door, she turned back one last time. Learn to live without them, because I do not think they are coming back. She walked out, and the door closed behind her with a sound that echoed through the empty hall. The council members looked at each other. For the first time, they saw the truth in each other's eyes. They had built their power on the backs of people they had treated like servants. They had taken and taken and taken, never imagining that the giving would stop. Now the giving had stopped, and they had no idea what to do. Outside the Great Hall, the lights of the council complex still glittered in the darkness, but they seemed dimmer now, less certain, like stars beginning to fade before a long and terrible night. On Earth, the sun rose over green hills and blue oceans. Children played in parks. Farmers worked their fields. Scientists pursued their research. Life went on, peaceful and unhurried, as if nothing had changed. Dr. Jiho Shin spent his days in the archives of Earth Station Memory, a massive orbital facility dedicated to preserving human history. His current project was simple but important. He was creating a complete record of everything humanity had given to the Galactic Council over the past 40 years. The list was longer than he had expected. Humanity had mapped safe routes through 300 dangerous regions of space. They had developed cures for 17 major diseases. They had designed navigation systems, communication networks, agricultural techniques, and educational programs. They had staffed hospitals, schools, and research facilities across 1,000 worlds. They had patrolled borders, rescued stranded ships, and mediated disputes between hostile species, all of it given freely. All of it taken for granted. All of it gone now. Jiho compiled his findings into a report and sent it to Commander Yunjino, who led the human defense perimeter. It was not really a military force. Humanity had never been interested in conquest. It was simply a line of stations and patrol ships that marked the boundary of human space. No, council ships were allowed to cross that line. Not because humanity wanted war, but because they wanted peace. Their own peace. The kind of peace that came from not being used anymore. Yunji read Jiho's report in her office. A small room with a window that looked out at the stars. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and steady hands. She had spent 20 years serving in council space before the withdrawal. She had seen how humans were treated. She understood why things had to change. We gave them everything, she said to her second-in-command, a young officer named Doan Kong, and they never even said thank you. Doan nodded. He was young enough that he had never served in council space. He only knew what he had been told. Do you think they will survive without us? Yunji looked out at the stars. Some of them will. The ones who were kind to us. The ones who treated us as equals. She paused. The others? I do not know. And honestly, I do not care anymore. On the other side of human space, Councilwoman Minji Han sat in her office at the Earth Government Complex. Every day, her computer filled with messages from alien governments, requests for aid, pleas for help, offers of payment that grew more desperate with each passing week. She read them all. She answered them all. Her response was always the same. Humanity wishes you peace. Our resources are committed to our own people at this time. It was not a lie. Humanity was using its resources. They were building new colonies, developing new technologies, creating new art and music and literature. They were doing all the things they had always wanted to do, but never had time for, because they were too busy helping others. Mingy sometimes felt guilty about the messages she sent. She knew that people were suffering in council space. She knew that children were dying of diseases that human doctors could cure. She knew that families were being torn apart by wars that human mediators could stop. But she also remembered the council sessions where human proposals were laughed at. She remembered the trade agreements that had stolen trillions from her people. She remembered the patents that had been filed on human inventions, the credit that had been stolen, the kindness that had been mocked. Humanity had given enough. It was time for others to learn to stand on their own. Meanwhile, council space was falling apart. The Kethrani economy collapsed when the trade routes became too dangerous to use. Millions lost their jobs. Billions lost their savings. The great cities that had once shone like jewels were now dark and desperate. The Salathi Union fractured into civil war. Without human mediators to calm tensions, old hatreds flared back to life. Brother fought brother. Cities burned. By the end of the 6th month, the Union had split into a dozen warring factions. The Vorn collectives stretched their military thin, trying to maintain order. But there were too many problems and not enough ships. Pirates roamed freely. Warlords carved out territories in the outer regions. The borders that humans had protected for free were now bleeding wounds, and through it all, refugees began to flee. They came in small ships and large ones. They came alone and in families. They came from species that had once looked down on humanity as lesser beings. Now they were the ones begging for help. The first refugee ship arrived at the human defense perimeter on a cold morning in the 7th month. Commander Yunji watched it approach on her screens. It was a small vessel, barely big enough for 50 people. It was carrying 300. What do we do? Doan asked. Eung thought about it for a long time. She thought about all the times humans had asked for help and been refused. She thought about all the insults and the theft and the mockery. She thought about how good it would feel to turn these people away, to let them experience what humanity had experienced. Then she thought about who she was, who her people were, what they believed in. Let them through, she said quietly. Give them food and medicine. Find them homes. Doan looked surprised. After everything they did to us? Yunji smiled sadly. That is exactly why we help them. Because if we turn them away, we become like them. And I will not let that happen. The refugees were welcomed. Every single one. They were given food, medicine, shelter, and kindness. No questions were asked about their past. No payment was demanded. They were simply helped because they needed help. Word spread quickly through council space. Humanity was accepting refugees. Humanity was showing mercy to the very people who had wronged them. Some called it weakness. Others called it foolishness, but those who received the help called it something else. They called it humanity. When news reporters asked Commander Yunji why she was helping people who had treated humanity so badly, she gave an answer that would be remembered for generations. We do not help others because they deserve it. We help them because that is who we are. But we will never again give our help to those who sit in halls of power and call kindness weakness. The council used us. These people were just caught in the middle. There is a difference. The refugees listened to her words. They remembered them. And slowly, quietly, they began to understand something that their leaders had never grasped. Kindness was not weakness. It was the greatest strength of all. 1 year after the withdrawal, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council was nearly empty. The crystal walls still glittered, but the light seemed cold now. The polished floors still shone, but footsteps echoed through silence instead of crowded noise. Half the member species had withdrawn. The others sent only junior representatives. Too afraid to commit their important leaders to a failing institution, Elder Vorik sat alone in his seat. He had been stripped of most of his titles. His own people had turned against him when the economy collapsed. He was no longer Elder Vorix of the Kethrani Dominion. He was just Vorix now, an old man with gray scales and nothing left to lose. He had sent hundreds of messages to Earth over the past year. Most went unanswered. The few responses he received were polite but firm. Humanity was not interested in returning. Humanity was busy with its own affairs. Humanity wished the council well. Finally, in desperation, Forex sent a personal message to Ambassador Unikim. He did not use diplomatic language. He did not make demands or offer deals. He simply wrote the truth. Please, come back. We were wrong. He waited 3 weeks for a response. When it came, it was not what he expected. I will address the council one final time, not to negotiate. Not to discuss terms, simply to speak. If you wish to hear what I have to say, I will come. Oryx accepted immediately. He did not know what Yuna wanted to say. He did not care. He just wanted to see a human face again. He wanted to remember what hope looked like. On the day of her arrival, the Great Hall was fuller than it had been in months. Word had spread that the human ambassador was coming. Species that had not sent representatives in weeks suddenly found time to attend. Even the Valoran ambassador returned, taking her seat quietly in the upper levels. Admiral Guan Park watched from Earth through a secure communication link. He sat in his home, a small house on a hill overlooking the ocean. His granddaughter Soyan sat beside him, curious about the strange meeting happening so far away. "Who is she?" Soyan asked, pointing at the image of Yuna walking into the Great Hall. "An old friend," Jiwan said softly. "She is going to say goodbye." Yuna walked to the central platform. She was older now than when she had first stood in this place. There were lines on her face that had not been there before. But her eyes were clear, and her voice was steady when she began to speak. "I came to this hall for the first time 20 years ago," she said. "I was young and hopeful. I believed that the galaxy was full of people who wanted the same things we wanted: peace, cooperation, kindness. I believed that if we gave freely, others would learn to give as well." She paused and looked around the room. Most of the representatives could not meet her eyes. "I was wrong. Not about humanity. We gave freely because that is who we are. But I was wrong about this council. I was wrong to believe that kindness would be returned with kindness. I was wrong to believe that generosity would be respected instead of exploited." Vorik shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but the words would not come. "For 40 years, humanity asked for nothing from you," Yuna continued. "We shared our technology. We shared our medicine. We shared our time and our energy and our hearts. We did this because we believed it was right. We did this because helping others made us feel like we were part of something larger than ourselves. And what did we receive in return? You called us naive. You called us weak. You stole our inventions and sold them for profit. You taxed our ships and laughed at our charity. You took everything we offered and mocked us for offering it." Her voice did not rise. There was no anger in it, just a quiet sadness that filled the Great Hall like fog. "We did not leave because we were angry. We left because we finally understood something important. You cannot pour water into a vessel that refuses to hold it. You cannot fill a cup that has no bottom. We gave and gave and gave, and it was never enough. It could never be enough, because you did not want partners. You wanted servants." The Valoran ambassador nodded slowly. Others stared at the floor, shame written on their faces. "So, we stopped giving. And now you have learned what we learned long ago. Kindness is not weakness. It is the hardest kind of strength. It takes courage to help others when you know they might not help you back. It takes faith to give without expecting anything in return. You thought we were foolish? But we were the ones holding your galaxy together, and you never even noticed until we were gone." She took a deep breath and spoke her final words. "Rebuild, learn, grow, change, and perhaps one day, when you understand that kindness is not something to be exploited, when you learn to give as freely as you take, we will be here. We will always be here, because that is who we are. But we will never again be your servants. We will never again be your quiet little helpers in the corner. If you want our friendship, you will have to earn it. And earning it starts with becoming the kind of people who deserve it." She bowed once, a simple gesture of respect that somehow felt more powerful than any display of force could have been. Then she turned and walked out of the Great Hall. The door closed behind her with a sound that echoed through the silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of her words settled over the assembly like a blanket of snow on Earth. Admiral Juwan turned off the communication link. His granddaughter was looking at him with wide eyes. "What happened to the aliens?" she asked. Ji-won looked out the window at the setting sun. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, among the stars, the council was facing the consequences of its choices. He did not feel happy about their suffering, but he did not feel guilty either. "They are learning," he said softly. "The hardest lesson there is." "What lesson?" He put his arm around her and held her close. She was the future of humanity. Her generation would decide whether to forgive, whether to help again, whether to trust. He hoped they would choose kindness, as humanity always had, but he also hoped they would remember that the quiet ones, the kind ones, were the ones holding everything together, and you never know what you have until it is gone. Soyeon thought about this for a long time. Then she looked up at her grandfather with serious eyes. "Will we help them again someday?" Juan smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a hopeful one. "Maybe when they are ready to be helped. When they learn to say thank you. When they understand that kindness is a gift, not a right." He looked back at the stars one more time. "Until then, we wait. We grow. We become better. And we remember who we are." The sun finished setting. The stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with light. And on Earth, humanity continued to live as they always had, quietly, kindly, waiting for the day when the galaxy would be ready to join them.